Hi, it's All Age Transformation Access Week. We're going to hear now from Emma Southern, who's a project manager from the Prince's Trust, who's been here every day this week supporting the development of the access pathway. So, Emma, we're on Friday
Yes.
of Access Week. We've made it. So, just your reflections, really. It'd be nice to hear about how's the week gone.
Okay, it's a long week. It's been a tough week, but in a positive way. And it's just great to meet so many clinicians, so many other service users, carers, to really thrash out some quite complex ways on a model and to be able to sort of really think outside the box. So it's been really useful to see that and integrate with that.
Yeah. So not always easy.
No, not
Some
easy
difficult
at all.
conversations. Are there any sort of things you can really remember talking about in the week that were particularly hard to get consensus?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because it's about the all-age conversation, isn't it? Because we know from where the different services we've all come from or experienced, that we're all very passionate about particular age groups or particular vulnerable characteristics. So it's about looking at that and how that actually, in reality, is that going to be easy to fit together? Like a one size sort of fits all at the point of access. And I think that's the thing to remember, isn't it? It's always trying to remember we're just trying to solve a little bit at a time, which is a really good way of doing it. Because it's such a big concept and quite sort of innovative to do it through co-design, really, and have that conversation. But I guess it is thinking about that initial, for us, from the charitable and voluntary sector or those staff that work out in other sort of public sector organisations. It's how we can better link to mental health support and feel there is a supportive contact point, really. So we actually, because not only does it get access to better services for people we're working with, but it also helps us sort of improve our own learning. So every time you have to ring on behalf of somebody, you build your knowledge up. You start to navigate through things that are there, but at the minute you don't, because you just tell somebody to go to the GP. So you're quite isolated from what happens. So I think it's really good to look at that, how somebody gets in touch and then what happens.
Yeah. So
I think that's been really interesting. I think that's been quite interesting to see how the clinicians have to think about what it looks like from that person's perspective. Because once you're so embedded in it, you forget some of the simple things. So I think that's been really good to try and thrash that out.
Yeah. And do you think we've had sort of a fair and equal representation of people in the room?
I think so. I think it's a really good selection of people. I think on co-design work like this, you're always open to lots of criticism, but I think there's two things that I think are really effective. Is that there is such diversity, so all the services have been represented, whether it's for the whole 5 days or whether they've come in and out for different bits. So to see GPs there who also have the clinical commissioning leads is fantastic. And to see those GPs speak to service users and the psychiatry, it's fab. Service users of all ages and all different experiences, carers. But I think it's great that you've had the evening sessions feeding in.
Okay.
So you've tried to tackle those issues and thought about equality and diversity at the front end to say how can we make sure people's views can be heard. So to me, the fact you had the surveys out, that you've given everybody as much opportunity to engage.
Yeah. And do you think the kind of the way we work considered those views? Do you think those views came into the room and we actually saw them?
Very much so. And I think people, what has been great is people have been very open about that. So sometimes when you're in the thick of planning stuff, you can forget some really simple things like, is English everybody's first language?
Yeah.
And it actually gets everybody stuck, but there's a real passion and an understanding that Leicester City is a very culturally and ethnically diverse city. So you've actually got to, and you've got to think about all those vulnerable characteristics. But I think because you have carers, you've got health professionals, you've got the voluntary and community groups there, you've got very empathetic and passionate organisations trying to design a model. So quite often by default, people want to do the right thing. you're not sort of fighting a losing battle.
Yeah, because people talk, didn't they, about sort of the approach
Yeah.
in terms of is it a holistic model
Yes.
compared to a diagnosis model, and
Yeah.
I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but the room very much felt person-centred, holistic.
Well, and I think that was from day 1 and 2. It's about treating the person, not the diagnosis or the condition, because it's so easy to label somebody, but there's a person there. There's a carer infrastructure, whether it's immediate family or other organisations. Because I think that was for myself was quite important. That quite often, as a charity or an organisation, or you might just be a volunteer in a very small community group, you want to feel that you're helping somebody, and you can see something quite serious is happening.
Yeah.
And it might be at 9 o'clock at night. It's not Monday to Friday 9 to 5. So I think that was quite important, that it is a person, and that whoever's ringing on behalf or texting in or encouraging somebody to access some support, that you feel it's being taken seriously, and there's something can happen.
Yeah.
And that was quite passionate from the word go. I think everybody was aware of blockages in the system, and there's a real passion and energy to want to address that, and to be very open and transparent about what doesn't work, where there is pockets of good practice. And I think that's been great to hear that. Actually, it's been, certainly for me, it's been really insightful to understand the complexity of what's inside mental health support, because it is extremely complicated. But to a front-end user, it was sort of getting across, we don't need to know that, we just want to know we've received a good service.
Yeah. So what are the next steps, do you think?
For the whole project?
Well, just what would you see as kind of the key for access and for moving into assessment? What do you think's next, and what would you very much like us to continue to work on?
I think what we found from this week is that access, to some extent, it's been really difficult, but it's probably one of the easiest parts.
Okay.
Because I think as we move into the next stage, assessment, and it's all about people's expectations, and it's balancing expectation with reality. And also, I think one of the big things that is more complicated is not like physical health, where mental health, not everybody wants help. So it's how do you encourage somebody to go forward with assessment and treatment if they don't want to do it? It's so it's quite an interesting concept. It's not like, well, I've broken my leg, everyone accepts there's something you have to do about it. Mental health's very difficult, and I think when we talk about inclusivity and diversity and all of those different communities, there's quite a lot of work to do with understanding, once they've made contact, what does that actually look like? Because there's quite a lot of complexity to that as well. But I think the co-design model works really well. I think having particular experts maybe come in onto certain sessions, not having maybe to do every day, is quite effective. Obviously, having the GPs there that have come in and contributed, sometime when we've worked up an idea, sometimes they throw some really important things in that might have been forgotten, but they didn't need to sit to do the whole thing. So I think that was good. And I think it's about getting that representation, isn't it, on those evening groups. So I think the voluntary and community sector and charitable sector, we probably need to do more to get people on board in getting their voices heard throughout this process. And that's something I'll take away in terms of is the bits that need to happen after it. So even when you're going through the follow-on planning stages, I think there are people who'd still want to be involved and pick up the phone and have conversations about what's next in terms of the implementation of it, I guess. But it's been a really good week.
Great, thank you. Cheers.